For more than a century, one door beneath an ancient Hindu temple has remained sealed, not because it is hidden, not because it is impossible to reach, and not because nobody knows it exists. The door is there. People know where it is, and yet it remains closed. Deep beneath Padmanabhaswamy Temple in southern India lies a chamber known as Vault B. In 2011, investigators opened several hidden vaults beneath the temple. What they discovered shocked the world. Mountains of gold, ancient jewels, treasures worth billions of dollars. Vault after vault revealed unimaginable wealth. But then they reached the final chamber, Vault B, and suddenly, everything stopped. There was no visible lock, no keyhole, no obvious way to open the door. Only two giant cobra carvings staring out from the stone, silent, watching, guarding whatever lay beyond. At first, many assumed it was simply another treasure room, a reasonable explanation. But if Vault B is only another vault, why is it the only chamber that remains sealed today? And what did generations of guardians know that we do not? To understand why Vault B became one of the world's most famous mysteries, we need to look at the temple built above it. Padmanabhaswamy Temple is one of the most sacred Hindu temples in India. For centuries, pilgrims have traveled here to pray. Ancient rituals continue inside its stone halls, even today. At first glance, it seems like a place of peace, a place of devotion, a place where little has changed for generations. But beneath the temple lies something most visitors never see, a network of hidden vaults. For centuries, these chambers remained closed to the outside world. Then, in 2011, investigators were given access to several of them. What they found became one of the most extraordinary treasure discoveries in modern history. Gold coins, jewels, ancient artifacts, treasures accumulated over centuries. Suddenly, the hidden vaults beneath the temple became famous around the world. But one chamber stood apart from all the others. One chamber surrounded by stories, warnings, and unanswered questions. A chamber known simply as Vault B. And unlike every other vault beneath the temple, it remains sealed to this day. At first, many people assumed Vault B was simply another treasury, another hidden chamber beneath an ancient temple, another room waiting to be opened. After all, every other vault beneath the temple had eventually revealed its secrets. Why should this one be any different? For a moment, that explanation seemed perfectly reasonable, until investigators took a closer look at the entrance itself. And that is where the mystery began. Most ancient vaults have a way to enter them. A lock, a keyhole, a mechanism, some indication that the chamber was designed to be opened. Vault B appeared different. According to reports and temple accounts, there was no visible lock, no keyhole, no obvious mechanism, nothing that suggested how the chamber could be opened. Just a massive stone doorway standing silently in the darkness, as if it had been sealed by a method no longer understood. And immediately, a new question emerged. If there is no lock, where is the key? Researchers searched for practical explanations. Perhaps the locking mechanism was hidden. Perhaps it had been lost over time. Perhaps it was concealed behind the stonework itself. All reasonable possibilities, but none of them answered a more important question. Why would anyone design a chamber like this in the first place? Because vaults are normally built to protect something. And if something is meant to be protected, it is usually meant to be accessed eventually. Yet Vault B seemed different. The entrance did not appear to invite entry. It appeared to discourage it, as though the purpose of the door was not to keep people out temporarily, but to keep something separated indefinitely. Of course, that may simply be an illusion, a misunderstanding created by centuries of stories, a mystery created by an unusual design, a perfectly logical explanation. For a moment, it seemed the puzzle might finally have an answer. But then investigators noticed something else, something carved directly into the entrance. Two figures that would transform the mystery completely. two giant cobras. And suddenly, the question was no longer how the door could be opened. The question became, why were the cobras there in the first place? At first glance, the carvings may not seem unusual. Throughout India, ancient temples are filled with sacred symbols, gods, guardians, animals, mythological beings. Many historians initially believed the cobra carvings on Vault B were simply another example of religious artwork, a reasonable explanation. After all, serpents have appeared in Hindu traditions for thousands of years. Mystery solved, or so it seemed. But the deeper researchers looked, the harder that explanation became to accept, because these were not small decorative carvings hidden among dozens of others. They dominated the entrance. Two massive cobras, positioned directly on the doorway itself, almost as if they had been placed there for a specific purpose, not to decorate, but to communicate something. And that raises an important question. Why place guardian serpents on the only vault that remains sealed? Why not on every chamber? Why only Vault B? The deeper people examined the mystery, the more the symbolism began to stand out. In many Hindu traditions, Nagas are not simply snakes. They are guardians, protectors of sacred places, protectors of hidden knowledge, protectors of things that must remain undisturbed. Ancient stories describe them watching over treasures, sacred sites, underground realms, and forgotten secrets. Suddenly, the carvings looked very different. What once appeared decorative began to feel intentional. Of course, symbolism alone proves nothing. Ancient temples are full of symbols, and symbols can mean many different things. A logical explanation. Perhaps the cobras were simply religious artwork after all. For a moment, the mystery seemed ready to shrink once again. But then another detail emerged. Because according to temple traditions, the cobras were never described as decoration. They were described as a warning that survived generation after generation. Long before modern investigators arrived, long before newspapers reported on the treasure, long before the world had ever heard of Vault B. And that changes everything. Because decorations do not create centuries of warnings. Stories do not survive for hundreds of years without a reason. Something about the chamber caused people to remember. Something convinced generations of guardians to preserve the story. And nobody seems to know exactly why. The deeper we go, the stranger the mystery becomes. Because now we are no longer asking, what is behind the door? We are asking, why did people feel the need to warn others about it? And according to some of the oldest traditions surrounding Vault B, the answer may lie in something known as Naga Bandham, a mysterious concept that many believe was connected directly to the chamber itself. By now, the mystery of Vault B had already become difficult to explain. A sealed chamber, no visible lock, no keyhole, two giant cobras guarding the entrance, and centuries of warnings surrounding the door. But then researchers encountered a tradition that made the story even stranger, a tradition known as Naga Bandham. According to certain temple legends, Naga Bandham was not an ordinary lock. It was not made of metal. It was not made of stone. And it was not designed to be opened in the usual way. Some traditions describe it as a sacred seal, a protection connected to ancient rituals and powerful mantras. A barrier created not through physical force, but through spiritual knowledge. No one knows exactly when these stories began, and no historical evidence has ever confirmed such claims. Yet the tradition survived, century after century, long before the modern world became interested in Vault B. At first, many historians dismissed the idea completely, and perhaps they were right. Ancient cultures often created legends to protect sacred places, a warning story, a religious tradition, nothing more, a simple explanation. For a moment, it seemed the mystery had finally reached a logical answer. But then another question appeared. If Naga Bandham was only a legend, why did the warning survive for so long? Why did generation after generation continue repeating the same story? Why preserve a warning for centuries if nobody believed it mattered? And that is where the mystery becomes difficult to ignore. Because whether the legend is true or not, the belief itself was real. People acted on it. People remembered it. People passed it on. The warning became part of the history of the chamber. And perhaps that is more important than whether the story can be proven. The deeper researchers looked, the more they discovered that Vault B was being treated differently from every other vault beneath the temple. Not by modern investigators, but by the people who guarded the temple long before them. That distinction is important, because it suggests the caution surrounding Vault B did not begin recently. It was already there, waiting, long before newspapers, long before treasure discoveries, long before global attention. And that raises a troubling possibility. What if the mystery was never created by modern speculation? What if the mystery existed long before anyone thought to investigate it? Suddenly, the focus shifts once again. The question is no longer, is Naga Bandham real? The question becomes, why did so many people believe it was? And that question leads directly to the most unusual fact in the entire story. Because every other vault beneath the temple was eventually opened. Every single one. Except one. Vault B. At this point, the mystery seems to revolve around legends, warnings, cobras, and stories passed down through generations. But there is one fact that makes Vault B different from almost every other ancient mystery. A fact that nobody can ignore. Every other vault beneath the temple was eventually opened. Investigators entered them, cataloged them, documented their contents, and what they found was extraordinary. Gold coins, jewels, ancient artifacts, treasures accumulated over centuries. The discoveries were so vast that experts struggled to estimate their true value. For a moment, it seemed as though the entire mystery had finally been solved. The hidden vaults contained treasure. The treasure had been found. The story was over. A perfect explanation, until one detail changed everything. One chamber remained closed. Vault B, and suddenly, all of the old questions returned. Why this vault? Why not the others if the chamber contained treasure? Why was it treated differently if the warnings were only legends? Why did they survive around this vault alone? And if Vault B was simply another room? Why does it remain sealed, even now? The deeper people examined the story, the harder these questions became to answer, because every explanation seemed incomplete. Treasure explained the wealth, but not the warnings. Religion explained the symbols, but not the secrecy. Tradition explained the caution, but not why the caution endured for so long. Every answer solved one part of the puzzle, while creating another, and perhaps that is why Vault B continues to fascinate people around the world. Because the mystery is built on something real. The chamber exists, the temple exists, the treasure exists, the warnings exist, and most importantly, the door remains closed. That combination is incredibly rare. Most mysteries are either entirely legend or entirely historical. Vault B exists somewhere in between, a place where documented history and ancient tradition collide. And that collision creates a question that nobody has been able to answer. What makes Vault B different? Because if the chamber truly contains nothing unusual, then keeping it sealed makes little sense. But if the chamber does contain something unusual, why has nobody been allowed to find out? And this is where the mystery becomes even more intriguing, because once people accepted that Vault B was different, they began creating theories. Some believed unimaginable treasures remained inside. Others believed sacred relics were hidden behind the door. And a few believed something far more unusual, that the true significance of Vault B was never about treasure at all. It was about what the chamber represented. A secret, a warning, or perhaps a piece of knowledge that was never meant to leave the darkness behind the door. And that possibility would lead to the most fascinating theories of all. By now, one question dominates the entire mystery. What is behind Vault B? It sounds like a simple question, but after more than a century of speculation, nobody has been able to answer it. And in the absence of answers, theories began to emerge. The first theory is also the simplest: treasure. Many people believe Vault B contains more wealth than any of the other chambers. After all, the vaults that were opened revealed enormous treasures: gold coins, jewels, ancient artifacts, objects hidden for centuries. A logical conclusion: if every other chamber contained treasure, perhaps Vault B contains even more. Perhaps the greatest treasure of them all. For a moment, the mystery seems almost solved, until one question changes everything. If the chamber only contains treasure, why preserve centuries of warnings? Why surround it with stories? Why treat it differently from every other vault? Suddenly, the treasure theory begins to feel incomplete, and that leads to the second theory: sacred relics. According to some traditions, certain objects are considered too sacred to be displayed, too sacred to move, too sacred to disturb. Some believe Vault B may contain relics connected to ancient rituals or temple traditions, objects intended to remain hidden forever. A fascinating possibility, and one that would explain why the chamber has been treated differently. But even this theory creates new questions, because sacred relics are usually protected, documented, remembered. Yet nobody seems certain what might be inside Vault B. The mystery remains. And that brings us to the most intriguing theory of all, a theory that shifts the entire story in a new direction. What if Vault B was never about treasure? What if it was never about relics? What if the true significance of the chamber lies in something far less visible? Knowledge. Ancient knowledge. Forbidden knowledge. Knowledge that generations believed should remain hidden. Throughout history, power has often been protected through secrecy. Certain teachings were shared only with a select few. Certain texts were hidden. Certain rituals were carefully guarded. Some researchers have wondered whether Vault B could be connected to traditions like these. Not a treasury of gold, but a treasury of secrets. No evidence confirms this idea. No document proves it. Yet it continues to fascinate people for one simple reason: knowledge can be more valuable than treasure, and sometimes more dangerous. But there is a problem with every theory. Treasure leaves questions unanswered. Relics leave questions unanswered. Knowledge leaves questions unanswered. No matter which explanation we choose, one mystery remains. Why was the chamber kept closed for so long? Because perhaps the most remarkable thing about Vault B is not what may be hidden inside. It is the decision made by generations before us. The decision not to open it. The decision to leave the mystery intact. And that decision may tell us more than any treasure ever could. Because the deeper we examine Vault B, the less it feels like a search for answers, and the more it feels like a confrontation with a mystery that was never meant to be solved completely. A mystery that grows larger every time we try to explain it. And that realization leads to the final question. A question that transforms Vault B from an archaeological mystery into something much bigger. After everything we have explored, the sealed door, the missing lock, the cobra guardians, the warnings, the legends of Naga Bandham, and the countless theories surrounding the chamber, we arrive at the same place where the mystery began. A single unanswered question. Why? Why does Vault B remain closed? Not because nobody knows where it is. Not because the chamber was forgotten. Not because the world lost interest. The mystery has attracted global attention. Researchers have studied it. Historians have debated it. Countless theories have been proposed. Yet the chamber remains exactly as it was. Silent, untouched, sealed. And perhaps that is the strangest part of all. Because in most mysteries, time brings answers. New evidence appears. New discoveries are made. The unknown slowly becomes known. But Vault B has followed a different path. The longer it remains closed, the stronger the mystery becomes. Every year adds another layer. Every generation adds another question. And every attempt to explain it seems to create an even bigger mystery. Maybe there is treasure behind the door. Maybe there are sacred relics. Maybe there is ancient knowledge. Or perhaps there is nothing extraordinary at all. The truth is, nobody knows. And perhaps that uncertainty is what gives the story its power. Because eventually, the mystery stops being about what is hidden behind the door and becomes about the people who chose to keep it closed. Generation after generation, century after century, the guardians changed. Kings came and went. Empires rose and fell. The world transformed. Yet one decision remained the same: leave the chamber untouched. And that raises the most important question in the entire story. What did they know that we do not? What convinced so many people to preserve the warning? What made them believe that some mysteries should remain undisturbed? Perhaps we will never know. Perhaps one day the chamber will finally be opened. Perhaps the answer is waiting behind the door. Or perhaps the answer has been in front of us the entire time. Because maybe the greatest mystery of Vault B is not what lies inside. Maybe the greatest mystery is why generations of people believed it should stay closed. And until that question is answered, the mystery of Vault B will remain alive, waiting, silent, unfinished.